In this video, I'm going to be continuing to backtest USD JPY over the 2024 price action. For anybody new here, before we go through the actual backtesting, I'm going to be walking you guys through the full strategy as well. And even if you don't trade USD JPY, this video is going to provide you with a ton of value because this strategy can be applied to any pair, whether it be gold or Forex or USD JPY, whatever you guys trade. And if you can stick around until the end of the video, I'm also going to be giving away a ton of free resources as well. So before we get into the backtesting itself, let's just go through the strategy very briefly and then we'll jump right into the back testing. All right, guys, so as mentioned, let's go through a brief walkthrough of the trading plan itself before we get into the back testing. So the first thing that I'm always doing is first of all just marking on the overall market structure and direction on the daily and 4 hour. So for example, this is looking at the current structure on the 4 hour and daily, seeing whether a price is bullish or bearish, and then trading based off that, only in line with that overall higher time frame market direction, right? And the way I'm identifying structure is based on the typical sort of price action analysis. So what we're doing is we're very simply looking at whether price is creating higher highs and higher lows, or lower lows and lower highs, marking on any of the previous structure just to see where price is currently trading and to identify our trading range when we come to step 2 in the trading plan, right? What I'm also doing here as well, and this is important, is I will draw on any previous mitigations that we've had. So for example, here you can see we've had this breaker structure, then price pulls back into the supply. If price is pushed away from that area, I'm basically marking it on just so that I know where price has previously reacted from, and then this is going to help us going forward to identify any new zones and to see where price is likely to react from going forward, right? Then step 2 is very simply just to identify a point of interest inside the current trend leg. So once again, if price is in this bullish trend, we're looking for it to retrace somewhere within this bullish leg into a valid point of interest. And for me, I've outlined the main criteria right here, but very simply, I'll leave this trading plan in the description, by the way, guys, completely for free, so you can read through it in more detail in your own time. But very briefly, this area of interest or point of interest is an area of supply or demand, or an area of previous liquidity. If it is an area of supply or demand, it has to create an imbalance, and it has to have liquidity above or below it if it's a supply zone. And that's essentially what it validates a point of interest for me. So very simple, just looking for those areas where we could see price retrace back into before we get the continuations, right? And as I said, this will be for free in the description below, so you guys can download it if you want to read through it in more detail. I've also just included a little note here on taking into consideration the momentum of price as well. For example, if price in this case is rallying with all of this momentum, do you expect it to pull all the way back up to here, for example? You know, it's probably unlikely. So that is why it is important to take into consideration the momentum as well, rather than just kind of, you know, mechanically looking at it from that perspective. Step 3, once price comes into our point of interest, we don't want to just blindly buy or sell from it. We want to wait for some sort of confirmation. For me, this confirmation is always going to be on the M5 time frame, where we're looking for the lower time frame structure to flip back in line with the higher time frame. So for example, if price is bullish like this and we're waiting for it to pull back into a point of interest just here, on the M5 time frame, that is going to look like a downtrend, right? Like this. So all we're simply waiting for is for price to break the most recent lower high, close above it, and then retrace back into an area of interest on the lower time frame to then buy up and target some previous levels. And that is all we're simply waiting for. And then obviously the opposite to that, when we're looking for sales, we're waiting for price to break the most recent higher low. Essentially, this is just a change of character on the M5 time frame, so a breaker structure in the opposite direction to the trend for anybody unfamiliar with this concept. And then as for the actual entry area, what we're waiting for price to do is, once we see that change of character, obviously we don't want to just market execute, because that is going to kind of ruin the risk to reward of the trade. So we're waiting for a retracement into a discount or premium, and we have to identify an area of imbalance on the lower time frame in order to actually set the limit and execute the trade. Now, step 4 is where we actually going to target, where is our stop loss going to be positioned. Now, for me, the stop loss is always going to be in a place that actually invalidates the trade. I see a lot of SMC traders in particular that will place their stop loss, for example, just above the lower time frame supply or just below the lower time frame demand. And the issue with this is if you're, for example, trading a more volatile pair like gold, it will very often sweep this area and then still go in your intended direction. So placing it just above supply or just below demand does not actually invalidate the trade. What I personally do is I'll have a little bit of room just above it, just in case, and just to account for that scenario of price sweeping this area before then going in your intended direction. The TP, very simply, I'm going to mechanically target a 1 to 3. So this means that on every single trade, I'm simply targeting a 1 to 3 risk to reward, regardless of the price action to the left. This basically just helps to take any of the discretion out of the TP rule and gets around that problem of greed, which I know a lot of people struggle with. So if you haven't tried this, it's a massive game changer. I recommend trying it out. And then the 1 to 3 risk to reward is going to mean that you don't have to have an insanely high win rate in order to be profitable with this system. So step 4, that is essentially what we're doing, positioning stop loss in a place that invalidates the trade and then targeting a 1 to 3 risk to reward. Now, I've included down here a few more notes on risk management and risk management for prop firms, whether you're trading single account, multiple accounts, or your own live personal account as well. I've got a few key processes here that I implement as well, such as trade journaling. I've detailed exactly how I do that, as well as something called ASR, which is like a period-wise performance review, so whether that be weekly, monthly, or quarterly. And then I've also outlined how to do that as well. And all of this, along with the actual template for doing so, will be available for free in the description below if you guys want to check that out. But that is essentially everything in regards to the trading plan. So now let's head over to the charts and let's get into the backtesting itself. Okay guys, so thank you for joining me here over on the charts. So what we're going to do, I'm going to start from a completely blank chart and we're going to go through the backtesting session. So from last time, what we can see, zooming out to the higher time frames, again, which is step 1 in the trading plan, is we can see that very higher time frame wise, price was overall in this bullish trend. Even if you're not marking on the structure, you can kind of see that visually, right? You've had price come down, grab these previous lows, tap into the demand on the weekly time frame just here, and then we've seen that rally over to the upside. It has just swept this high, and then we've seen this retracement recently. Actually, my bad, it hasn't swept this high yet, but you can see price has left these sort of 2 equal highs up here. It then has recently retraced, held the weekly demand and fell to break lower, and now we've seen again this push up towards these previous highs. So what we're looking at here is the fact that price is highly likely going to continue up into these highs. You know, I'd be very surprised if, for example, it did something like this where it just suddenly reversed from this random area. That's just not how price typically moves. So if we're going over to the daily time frame, we can see some of the more refined structure. In particular, we had this daily change of character. So again, from this bearish structure to bullish structure, that is the change of character. We then had a retracement into this area of demand. So again, like I mentioned in the trading plan, what I'm doing here is just marking on some of the previous mitigations in the previous structure, just so I know exactly where price is, right? We've had another daily breaker structure right here. So once again, just looking for more continuations back up towards these previous highs. If we now drop to some of the lower time frames, what we can see here as well is that we had another pullback after price broke this high, and once again price formed a higher high. This therefore forms our new trading range where we're looking for the buys. Going down to the 1 hour, what can we see in terms of points of interest? So at the moment, I would be looking at maybe this area if price could pull back into it. If not, you have this sort of region down here, but let's first of all see how this first one reacts if price can retrace into it. Apart from that, there's not really anything else I would see here. Maybe this actually. So we've kind of had this consolidation. Price pushes down, sweeps these internal lows, and you can see it starting to react from there. quite a lot of bullish momentum coming in from there as well. In terms of entries, there's not really anything here because there's not any 5-minute structure, so this is going to be a no trade anyway. So if we just keep playing price on, okay, so you can see price now kind of moving down very correctively. Let's grab this previous low again, tapping into this imbalance to the left. So this could be another valid point of interest if it does start to show intent from this area. If not, we obviously have that lower level as well that we could still see it come into. Okay, so it has actually just flipped bullish here, as you guys can see. And this, by the way, is what I was speaking about in the trading plan, is that when prices retracing on the higher time frame in an overall bullish trend, the M5 time frame is obviously going to look bearish, and we're simply waiting for that shift over to the upside for price to continue buying. Now here, what we can see is price did form an area of demand, so this is actually a valid entry, which I'm going to set. And then, as I said before, we do that mechanical 1 to 3 risk to reward, and let's see how this goes. Okay, nope, so price got away from us. Obviously, we want to now cancel this limit. Great analysis, just price didn't pull back for us, unfortunately. Yeah, not really anything I would be doing there. Yeah, there we go. So you can see price broke the main structure again as well. Unfortunately, we didn't get an entry on that, but analysis was spot on. One thing I would watch out for here, I've just noticed, you have this sort of daily supply zone that you could definitely see a reaction from. The only thing with this, I wouldn't really be interested in trying to sell this. I would just expect maybe a small reaction for more continuations rather than trying to, you know, just sell this bullish trend, which is lower probability, right? So again, just looking for more buys up into that level from here. At the moment, points of interest in this range, we have this sort of area. First of all, we see how that reacts. Okay, so price did end up respecting it, but there wasn't an entry here. Obviously, price just kind of tapped it and went, which is slightly annoying, but we can move on and look for another trade anyway. Yeah, so lots of momentum in this area. I'm not really interested in sells whatsoever here. Again, you've got to ask yourself here, is it very high probability if you're looking to sell against all of this momentum? You know, probably not. It's much more higher probability just to look for continuations up into these previous highs. So if we're looking for a new area to buy from, you know, you have this sort of 15-minute area. Price can pull back. Okay, this is Asia session though, so I'm going to fast forward that. Cool, so let's see how it starts to react from this. There we go. So you can see after sweeping that demand zone, it has started to break to the upside. There's not any imbalance here though, so this is not quite valid for me. Yeah, so there's nothing I would enter from here at the moment. Looks like it wants to come back for the lows anyway. Yeah, there we go. Cool. So if we zoom back out, it does look like price is probably coming lower now, actually. If you zoom out to the daily time frame, the only thing that puts me off here, buying from here, is the fact that this whole leg is the daily bullish trend, right? And price is at the moment very much in a sort of premium of that leg and has reacted from that daily supply zone to the left. So could maybe see some more selling from here. If it can start to flip bullish from here, now that all of these lows have been taken out, then I would still consider buying, but I would have to see something quite clean for that to happen. Maybe now that Asia low has been taken. Okay, no, so price looks to be coming lower. You still have this area that price could react from. You can just see it's a very clear level of area of demand. So yeah, maybe this is kind of like the last point I would consider buying from if it does start to break higher. Yeah, so exactly like that. That's what I was waiting for. You can see here, 5-minute downtrend into the point of interest, but once it is tapped, you then get that shift over to the upside. In terms of entry areas, I would look to enter from this area. Just a very clear level of M5 demand. And then I would have stops just below this one, just in case price wants to retest lower. But yeah, this is a perfectly valid trade. So I'm going to set this. Actually, I'm going to enter slightly lower just so I can get a 1 to 3. Without targeting past the current highs up here. Cool. So you can actually see as well, this would have been a better entry, but price came back down. Use this first one as like an inducement into this area instead. So obviously that would have given us a better entry, but at the time I wasn't seeing that. So yeah, let's see if this can continue up. Okay, nope. So little loss on that one. Quite annoying because it did go like 2% in our favor. Yeah, there's not really anything else I'm seeing here at the moment. So I'll just let price develop some more. It's kind of just stuck in this consolidation at the moment. Yeah, there we go. So like I said, was highly likely here. Price has reacted from that daily supply and is now doing this bigger retracement. If you look at the daily though, it is still overall bullish. So what I would be looking for here is maybe if it can hold this daily demand zone. If it can do that, I'm still happy to buy if we get a valid entry from there. Still seeing prices bullish overall and seeing this as just like a pullback for eventual higher prices. Right, there we go. So prices come into that daily demand. Everybody's going to be in sales now as well, based off this previous move. Price also very nicely swept some previous lows into it, as you can see just there. So if it can start to flip bullish from here, we can look for some buys. So at the moment, I'd want it to break this high. Unless it re-grabs the lows here. Cool, there we go. So Asia session did give us that change of character, as you guys can see. And then as for entries, what I would look for is a sort of retest of this whole demand zone. I don't really want to over refine the entry and go for like this small candle down here, which you could do if you wanted a better entry, but
For me, this is a good enough risk to reward, and we're going to, as always, just target a 1 to 3. Slightly bigger stop on this one, but actually I might just make the stop slightly more refined. If it does come below this area, then I don't really want to be in that trade anyway. And then once again, we'll just adjust this. We can also look for scale-ins as well if price presents, so this is completely fine. Right, there we go. Nice entry so far. You can see as price came down as well, it did sweep some inducement into it. One thing I found is that if it does create liquidity above the entry like this, it becomes higher probability. And as I said here as well, if price does continue to develop, we can look for another entry and make the first one break even. There we go. So you can see price has now formed this very clear bullish lower time frame structure, whereas before it was in the downtrend. Back here, it's now very clearly shifted over to the upside, so we can look for some more continuations from here. And there we go. So on that first position, TP was hit for 3%, which is very nice. And yeah, what I'm seeing now is very simply just looking for, now that this daily demand has held, more continuations back up towards all of these highs up here. If we can see a pullback. Okay, so I'm going to fast forward Asia session as well. I'm not seeing much here, to be honest. It's kind of just consolidating. I wouldn't really be doing much here. Yeah, this is one thing about USD JPY as well. Like when price wants to buy, it literally just goes and doesn't really pull back. So it's kind of hard to get an entry in situations like that. But yeah, you guys can see now as well, it has just broken that main high. So what I would do here is just zoom out, look at this sort of more external structure, so the main structure, and then look for a pullback into this range. Still hasn't taken out this high up here, which we were looking for. So this main one, which is that main daily and weekly trend high. So here what we can look for is maybe a retracement to one of these lower levels. Okay, maybe this area, you can see price is starting to retrace. It has swept some previous lows. This would be a nice area to buy from, in my opinion. You can also see very clear 4-hour liquidity level, lots of momentum in the market as well. So definitely interested in buying from here if we can get an entry. Only thing here though is that there's not any lower time frame structure, so there's not going to be an entry even if the analysis is right. Okay, yeah, so cool. Price is coming lower anyway. This area would be the next point of interest. You can see it was a previous demand zone that price has now taken out. So yeah, there you go. Asia session, price pushed up, flipped bullish. So if we can get a retracement into this demand, this is what I was talking about, by the way, when I said you have to consider momentum. So in this case, we have had this change of character, right? And even though this area is in a premium, I would be fine to enter from it, because in a scenario like this, you don't expect price, for example, to pull all the way back down, you know, maybe to like this area. It's just there's a low chance of that happening, right? So it's better to just enter from one of these more premium levels with a bit more of a conservative stop than it is to kind of predict a move all the way back down to here. So I'm happy to enter this from this first demand zone if we can get a pullback. Right, so at the moment, slightly missed us. Maybe it can come back. If not, I can cancel the limit. Okay, so it's still valid at the moment, so I'm going to keep it on. Yeah, okay, so I'm cancelling this now. It's slightly annoying. It missed us by about 1 pip or so. And yeah, price did break that main high as well, as you guys can see. Cool, so next area that I would look for. Depends on how London opens, because this is the Asian session. So maybe if we can get a sweep, yeah, like that of Asia low. Price is tapped into a lower time frame demand as well. So if we can break above this high, I would consider buying from here. Maybe from this area of demand. You guys can see we did get the change of character we were looking for. After Asia low got taken out as well. So I'll enter here. Slightly more conservative stop once again. And we can get a 1 to 3 targets in that high. So this is fine. Demand is holding at the moment. That was a perfect entry actually. Okay, nope. So little loss on that one. Next, actually I never saw this before, but this is the next buying point of interest. We have this area of demand. Again, this is inside the current trend leg as well. So this is currently a valid area. So what I would be looking for here is either for price to break this high, which is the current structure, or for it to re-grab this low and then break structure. Apart from that, I wouldn't be doing anything here. So yeah, still waiting for one of those two things to happen. Right, there we go. So it did break this structure. This becomes invalid, by the way, if it breaks the main high before pulling back. But if it does pull back, we could look to enter from, this would be the demand I would enter from. The only thing I don't like here, though, is that you can't get a decent risk to reward. And yeah, it broke the main high anyway, so this becomes invalid. Like this. So what we need now is for price to retrace and form a new confirmation rather than just setting a limit. But this is still valid for me as a point of interest. Okay, nope. So that was now invalidated. Next area to look for would be... so actually what we can see here, we've got all of these previous lows. If price could sweep this is the first area. And then secondly, we have this slightly more discounted one. But yeah, I wouldn't want to buy above those lows. It just looks very obvious that price is going to take it out. Right, there we go. So it took out both of those lows actually. Higher time frame wise, if we zoom back out, it's very clearly still bullish as well. So I'm still happy to buy from here if we get an entry. And then, yeah, so the structure here I'd want to see broken is this high. If you zoom in closely on that, this low did sweep this low. So this counts as a change of character just here. And then entry area, if we can get a retracement into this sort of region. Actually, I'm happy to enter here anywhere on this sort of imbalance, that's fine. And then go for a 1 to 3. Like that. Just because, again, considering the momentum, I don't really think, you know, price may never pull back to this area, but if we can get an entry here, the trade is still valid. Right, there we go. Perfect entry so far, actually. See what I mean? When price is moving with all of this momentum, if you had set a limit down here, you would have missed the whole move just because you wanted to get, you know, one of these sniper entries that people talk about, but it's just really not necessary. And there we go. So TP hit on that one, just over 3%. And cool. So still what I'm seeing here, we could look for another entry. Still looking to buy back up into this current trend high. So next area we could maybe look at, we have this sort of 15-minute demand zone. Again, though, I would want another confirmation in this area rather than just setting a limit on it. Doesn't look like it's pulling back though. We'll also look at this area. You can see here, price is just forming all of these equal highs just above. Hasn't yet taken out any of these highs. Tapped into this area of demand. So this also becomes a valid zone for me. This one is also valid if price can come lower. But I would also focus on this first one. Currently, I need to see it break this high. And close above it. Right, there we go. So that's what I was waiting for. You can see now we've had a closure above that 5-minute structure. So again, just simply looking here for a pullback to buy price. Here is the first sort of area that I'm seeing. Very clear level of imbalanced demand. And below this area, there's not really anything you would expect price to retest because all of this is already efficient. There's no imbalance here. So if we can enter here, stops just below Asia low and go for a 1 to 3. This is a valid trade. Okay, nope, so price slightly missed us there. Great analysis though, that played out perfectly actually. And you can see now as well, if we zoom back out, it has broken the main high. So this one right here. So again, just every time it does that, I'm zooming back out and then looking at the new trading range, which is now between the low and the high. Nice one. So again, very bullish price action here, just simply looking for more pullbacks. Not even considering any sells here. Next point of interest here would be maybe if we can see what happens if these lows get taken. Apart from that, I'm not really seeing anything here. Price is kind of just consolidating at the top of the range. Right, there we go. So you can see now, all of this internal liquidity has been taken out. Price tapped into this imbalance just below. So this is a valid area to look to buy from. In this case, you can see we did have change of character right here. Price created this imbalance. So what I would do here, I would see this first region as like an inducement, enter on this imbalance, and then look to target up here for a 1 to 3. Actually, is this past the high? Yeah, this is past the high. So what I would do instead, I didn't want to target past this area, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to enter slightly lower. You can actually see we do have, if price could retest into this demand instead. So I'm going to cancel that limit and reset this one. Yeah, there we go. So price retested into it anyway. Nice reaction so far as well. Cool, there we go. So TP hit on that one. Price is also continuing over to the upside, as we can see. But yeah, guys, nice one. This video is already getting quite long, so I'm going to end it here, and then we're going to do we're going to continue the back testing from where we left off this time in next week's video. So stay tuned for that. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I'm going to give away a ton of free resources, and you can find these in the description below, including the full trading plan for this strategy and also the Notion trading journal, which I use for trade journaling and also doing that ASR process, which I mentioned at the beginning of the video. So make sure to check that out, and I'll see you guys in next week's video.